Welcome to our music assembly. Yes, it's Mrs. Grayson here, but I've got my camera focused on the screen because I want you to see these two musicians, Yehudi Menuhin and David Oistrakh. They're going to be playing the solo roles. They're both violinists, and they're going to be playing the solo roles in this double violin concerto by Bach. Let's just have a look at some of those words. Concerto, that is a piece of music for an orchestra and a soloist. And normally it's just one soloist. But because we've got two soloists here, Yehudi Menuhin and David Oistrakh, both playing the violin, it's called a double violin concerto. It doesn't mean there's some strange instrument that's a double violin. It just means there are two violinists. One of the things I want you to notice when you're listening to this piece of music is how small the orchestra is. There are no trumpets or trombones or timpanis or cymbals or glockenspiels or flutes or oboes. It's really just strings. This is a very small orchestra. Part of that is because of when this was written. Bach lived hundreds of years ago, between 1685 and 1750. So between the 17th and the 18th century, we're now in the 21st century. So it was a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. And in that time, musicians were they were more like servants, like cooks or gardeners or maids or dressmakers. Their job was to serve the very rich, and those people could be royal families, or they could be the heads of the church, people like archbishops. They could be very wealthy lords, people with lots and lots and lots of money, and they would have a private orchestra that would work for them. The only other way you could work as a musician was to work in a church. You could be the choir master or the organist of a church. And in fact, that's what Bach spent a great deal of his life doing. He was at a church in Leipzig, and he would record, come on, Mrs. Grayson, this is the 16th, 17th century. He would write music to be performed. He would not record it because they had no way of recording it. Technology has moved on quite a lot in 3 centuries. So he would write music and perform it and conduct that music to be sung in church. After that, he was employed by the Elector of Saxony, King of Poland. Those are both royal titles, people who were in control of a country. And this person employed Bach to be his musician, to write music for him, to teach the royal princesses how to play the clavichord and the virginals and various other instruments that were expected to be played by young ladies. So Bach had a very interesting life, but he was writing at a time when he wasn't a celebrity who could go and do huge concerts like a musician would today and be listened to by millions and millions of people. He was listened to by the very wealthy, or those people who would come to the church where he was employed. And apart from that, you wouldn't have known who he was. Anyway, the last thing I need to tell you before we listen to this piece of music is that during the time that Bach was alive, there was a very particular way of composing that everybody in the Western world was expected to follow. And this way was called counterpoint. The way to think of counterpoint is that the sounds that you hear are like ribbons following a path, and each ribbon of sound follows a different path, but they have to work together. And there were lots and lots of rules about how they would work together. So if you imagine, when you're listening to this, Yehudi Menuhin, imagine that he's the first violinist who plays on his own, that his ribbon of sound is, pick a colour, let's say it's yellow, okay? So Yehudi Menuhin's ribbon is yellow, and let's say that David Oistrakh's ribbon is orange, okay? And these two ribbons are going to flow along the path, and sometimes they're going to go very close to each other, sometimes they're going to go in different directions, sometimes they're going to come together. Very occasionally they'll even follow the same path. But each separate line of music, each separate path or ribbon of music has to make sense on its own. So it's not like what came along later, where you had a melody, a tune, on top, underneath held up by columns of sound, which are called chords, and this was the idea of harmony. Harmony exists in counterpoint, but it has to exist alongside this idea that each individual stream of sound, each individual ribbon of sound moving along makes sense on its own. So let's have a listen at last to the Bach Double Violin Concerto with Yehudi Menuhin and David Oistrakh, and listen out for those ribbons of sound. The first thing you'll hear is everybody playing the introduction before the soloists begin. So here we go. Oh dear, this happens sometimes. The computer signal goes. Here we go. Just going to stop it there, though I hate stopping music in the middle. Never mind. Can you hear how the two violins are like those two ribbons running between each other, going away from each other, taking turns to be the most heard and then backing away so the other can be heard? It's like a dance. It's almost like those two ribbons have been caught by the wind and are being twisted and turned by the different blow of wind. It's a really beautiful thing. Now, how are we going to respond to this today? We've been doing lots of drawing when we're listening to music, but I want you to do something rather tricky today. I would like you to try drawing with both hands. I would like you to pick one colour to be the Yehudi Menuhin violin and the other colour to be the David Oistrakh violin, and hold one colour in each hand, and then on a piece of paper see if you can make shapes and respond to what you're hearing as you're hearing it. Now, this is going to be tricky because most of us are left-handed or right-handed, so one hand's going to be strong and find it easy, and the other hand's not going to be so strong, it's going to find it quite difficult. It might feel quite weird. It might be easier if you draw with both hands at the same time, almost in a kind of mirror image. Let's have a bit more of a listen to this and see if you can imagine doing that. And then what I'd like you to do, if you're at school, you can go into our morning music and have a listen. If you're at home, you can use the music we've already played on this and listen again. So I'll leave it running for a little bit. Have a go, see what you can do, and enjoy. Oh, do you know, one last thing. Did I tell you about Bach? Yes, I did. That's okay. I was worried I hadn't remembered to tell you about Bach, but I did. He's regarded, by the way, by most musicians as the greatest composer that ever lived. This is my favourite story about Bach. When they were going to send a space probe into a never-ending journey to see if it could make contact with life forms on other planets, just going out into the universe indefinitely, just never-ending. They put messages from Earth on it, from different people speaking different languages, saying, welcome, we are human beings, we welcome you, we are friends, things like that. And they put in footage of people running in the Olympic Games and scientists, and they wanted to show all the things that were wonderful about the planet Earth. And one of the people who was involved in organising this was a man called Carl Sagan. And they said to him, what music shall we put on? Shall we put on some Bach, some Johann Sebastian Bach? And Carl Sagan said, no, that would just be showing off. Johann Sebastian Bach really is the greatest composer who ever lived. So don't stop at just listening to this piece. Go and find some more. But for now, let's have a go at drawing. There we are. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll listen to some more Bach. Okay, see you next time.